I always call them the best, worst experiences of my life.
It is unconscious, but maybe there's a deeper awareness that he's not conscious of.
I'm not the dish police, but I have been known to rewash dishes.
Oh my God, we got into a 9-car pileup.
On some level, it did happen.
So don't gossip, don't publicly shame her, quietly do what you need to do.
At one point in time in my life, I lived near a train track. That is a vibration.
What an experience to actually 100% know and come back and realize that this is just one experience and that you're not just 3D.
Another part of my personal philosophy is that I am responsible for my emotions.
Welcome to High Vibe Finds, the podcast. This is where I share my conscious take on pop culture and the human experience, plus a few intriguing stories that just might redefine your reality. My guest today is entrepreneur, podcaster, and fellow cosmic traveler, Ian Vogel. Welcome, Ian.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, is it snowing outside?
It is snowing outside, and it's cold, and it's windy. Yeah, it's such as Minnesota in January.
I don't think it snowed in LA since 1929 or something. But enjoy the winter wonderland.
I certainly will, and I appreciate the winter. The days get really long in the summertime and really short in the wintertime, and I appreciate the change of seasons and what the different energy that winter brings.
I grew up on the East Coast, and that was one thing that I loved about that, is that you can really feel the seasons as they change, and it gives you a sense of renewal and everything. So when I first moved to Los Angeles, it was really tough for me for at least a year. You know, I was like, wait a minute, when is the season going to change?
Yeah, I lived in Southern California for a couple of years.
So I have 5 cosmic questions I ask all my guests at the top of the show, and I'd love to hit you with those. You ready for them?
Absolutely.
Okay, the first question is, what is the most inspiring quote you've ever heard?
The first thing that pops into my mind is, "My life is my story." That is a quote by Gandhi. He was on a train, and the train was taking off, and there was a news reporter or somebody who was trying to get some words from him. They asked him to tell his story, and he said, "My life is my story." I think just having solid actions, like that's undeniable.
I love that. I think I could be wrong about who said this. I think it might have been Benjamin Franklin. But my dad used to quote saying that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, there's been more said than done. So imagine if we lived in a world where action was the only way that we could define ourselves. Second question, what's your ideal vacation?
I want to go to Varanasi, India. From what I understand, it's a really unique place. There's no other place like it in the world with all the crematoriums, and it's just people take pilgrimages there just to die. I never really get the urge to feel like I need to get away or even really want to go somewhere, feeling like I need to get out of my immediate space. But the first thing that came to my mind is Varanasi. I'd love to go to Varanasi.
Life is about the journey, after all. And it doesn't matter if it's where you are, because it could be an inner journey. You know, it all ultimately is an inner journey, no matter where we go. So that's great. Number 3, what happens to us when we die?
If you're not prepared for it, if it happens suddenly, it can be disorienting. That's something that would lead to a ghost-like scenario where somebody's lingering on this plane. You live a long and fruitful life, and you're on your deathbed, and it's kind of an expected thing, and you've got family around you. In that sort of a situation, you're in your body, and then you find yourself near your body, observing your body. And there's this realization that there's a continuation of my consciousness. It's just like waking up in the morning, but there's a sense of expansion, like a sense of openness, and interconnectivity. You know, there are guides and ancestors and benevolent spirits that are there to greet you. And then there's a process that you go through afterwards that you're led through.
I believe we're eternal beings. We are energy and consciousness, just having a human experience at the moment. So question number 4, what are your thoughts on meditation?
I've been a really serious meditator at different points in my life. I've done the 10-day silent Vipassana meditations. There was a point in my life where I did 77 minutes of meditation first thing in the morning and 77 minutes of meditation before going to bed. Now, most of my meditation is more of a moving meditation. So first thing I do in the morning is I get up and I go feed my chickens and my calves, and I go do chores, and then I go out in the garden and I usually weed for 15 to 30 minutes. And when I'm out doing my thing, I am am consciously accessing that state. I don't have headphones in. Like, I don't pick up my phone and get on my phone first thing in the morning because I recognize that can disrupt my ability to drop into that state. Rather than just doing the silent seated meditation, I've learned how to bring that into my life.
So last question before we dive in, what is your definition of consciousness?
I don't have a definition for consciousness. I don't think it can be defined. I think it can only be experienced.
I love that. So most of the stories that I'm going to share today are from Reddit, from the relationship advice, Am I the Asshole, plus a few bizarre ones at the end. And the last story is going to be our hot topic of the day. As I already mentioned to you, it has something to do with ayahuasca.
We're gonna go boom. We're gonna go.
So the first story is from the relationship subreddit. My dad is demanding I pay him back for raising me now that I have a good job. I, 28 female, recently got a promotion at my job. I'm now making $85,000 a year, which is really good for my area. I worked my ass off for this. I put myself through college with loans and scholarships, got my master's degree while working full-time, and finally got this promotion. I made the mistake of telling my family about it at dinner last month. My dad seemed happy, but he got this weird look on his face. Last week he calls me and says, now that I'm making good money, he expects me to start paying him back for raising me. He literally itemized things. $30,000 for housing costs over 18 years, $20,000 for food, $15,000 for clothing and necessities, $10,000 for transportation to schools and activities. He said, since he invested in me, it's only fair that I pay him back now that I'm successful. He wants $500 a month until it's paid off. I told him that's not how parenting works. He said I'm being selfish and ungrateful, and that in other cultures, children take care of their parents. I don't even know what to do with this.
I don't quite know what to do with it either.
So by the way, when I say OP, that's the original poster there. That's what I refer to. So what OP's dad is asking for is not about money. It's about like control and entitlement. And in a case like this, I would say that the best path forward is to set clear boundaries. She can tell her father how grateful she is for all his support while she was growing up, but also that she's not willing to treat her childhood as a debt that she owes him, because parenting isn't a loan agreement.
The thing about it is he didn't ask for her consent to conceive her. Therefore, how can you hold somebody to a standard? It's like writing a contract for somebody that they never signed. Kind of goes back to one of the foundational principles of my life: treat other people the way that you would want to be treated. Would you like to have an agreement that you didn't write, that you never agreed to, forced upon you? On some level, I understand the sentiment of the desire for reciprocity in life, and I think that's part of the parent-child relationship is learning about reciprocity. I've got two grandmothers who are in their 90s, and
Wow.
They're very childlike. One of my grandmothers has dementia, and she's pretty deep into it, and she is just like very much like a child. There's an arc in our lives that kind of goes that way. There's a lot of assumptions built into his whole supposition there, that how can he anticipate how much he's going to need her in the future? And say she does pay that off, does she just get to go, I'm done with you when it comes time when this debt is paid and you need help in the future? I'm just going to ship you off to a nursing home. My sense is underneath there's some sort of financial need.
If he would have asked her for something that he needed, I think she sounds like the type of person who would have been happy to do that. But, when you're put in a situation like this, I think it puts anyone like in that confused or defensive mindset. I think people feel more gratitude when there is like no overriding expectation, I think, because gratitude flows naturally when it's a harmonious exchange of energies. And if someone's trying to guilt you into feeling obligated to something, that's just low vibe. It's manipulation, and nobody wants to feel like they're being forced into things. It's all about choices. And, I just hope that her father can realize that he himself has the power within himself to attract his desires. And, pressuring his daughter is not a very natural or gracious way to do that. I don't know if you're familiar, but Reddit has this whole thriving community. It's like sort of the town psychiatrists and friendly advice. One of the things that someone said is actually what you said. Someone said, as soon as you can produce the contract where I agreed to be born and that you needed to be reimbursed for the cost of raising me, then I'll pay you. And another one, which I thought was interesting, which, because you brought up your grandmas, someone said, how much did he give his parents?
That would have been my thing. And like for me personally, when I encounter a challenging situation, especially with the people who are close to me, I start asking questions rather than, I found that to be the most disarming way to resolve tension within any interpersonal interaction is to start asking questions. So if I were her, I would make a long list of any question that popped up, and that would be one of them. Like,
Yeah.
where did this come from? Like, did your, like, how much was your childhood worth to your parents?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't really feel like money and love are equatable things. I feel like when you have abundance, if you're like in good alignments, there is a natural tendency to want to be generous. My father, for example, he grew up very poor, had to put himself through college, and really worked hard and smart as best as he could to kind of get where he was. But ultimately, he was not a hoarder. When he had something to share, he shared it. Though he does really have a lot of pride, maybe too much, about how hard he had to work in order to attain something, he never saw this as like just about money.
Yeah, and I mean, even presenting that question and getting to that point, why now? Like, why are you giving me the bill now? I mean, just a lot of questions come up for me that, if I were her, I would just dig more, like dig deeper. Like we said, this is a symptom of something else that's going on underneath, and ask questions until you find out what's really motivating this behavior.
Absolutely. Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend I won't do dishes anymore if she keeps double checking my work? So we moved in together last month. She likes to cook and is good at it. So our original agreement was that she would cook and I would do the dishes. That's fair, except every single time I did the dishes, she would pretty much check on my work, like following behind me after I started the load. And sometimes she would unload it and reload it the way she thought was appropriate. And whenever I was hand washing, she always insisted on being there and inspecting everything that wasn't up to her standard. So I finally had enough and told her that I wouldn't be doing the dishes anymore if that's how things will go. Or I can cook for myself and do my own dishes that she won't get to touch. She can have her separate dishes. She said she was just trying to be helpful and that I was rude for what I said and the way I said it. Am I the asshole?
Another part of my personal philosophy is that I am responsible for my emotions and how I perceive the world around me. Like, the emotions that occur within me are my responsibility. So saying that nobody makes me feel anything. Like, nobody can make me feel rude. If I feel like disrespected, or if something pushes a button, or I feel somebody says something and it triggers something in me, for me, that's an opportunity to look within myself and say, okay, well, what is within me such that when this person said this thing, I felt this? Is that appropriate? Does this really make sense? Do I really need to be butthurt about the dishes?
Right.
So, like, looking at it from that vantage point, taking responsibility for your own emotions, I think is really important. Also, I just need to be honest. I'm not the dish police, but I often do the dishes with my partner, and I have been known to rewash dishes and rearrange the dishwasher. Like, I can totally see the necessity to get dishes clean. If the dish has food on it, even if you cleaned it, then we don't want to put that back in the drawer. So there's some like practicality to what she's doing, and I guess it's kind of hard to tell if he's being overly sensitive about having his work being checked as far as the dishes. I feel like on some level, every accusation is an admission. So this may be a projection, or he's feeling a certain way about it, and he's kind of projecting his feelings or like making too much out of it.
It's funny because one of the comments says, is she double checking because you have a history of subpar cleaning? That can be incredibly unhygienic. Another one says, is she controlling in other ways? Which is a good question because he's only talking about dishes. But my first thought is that this isn't really about dishes in a way. It's about trust. So when someone does agree to do something for the household, I think you have to let them do it their way because no one likes to be micromanaged. However, if really it's obvious that he's not doing a good job, then the partner has every right to bring that up. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the reason when there's any tension here is because the partner has not brought it up to them. They're just doing that thing where they're hovering around. And perhaps the high vibe way to approach this is to shift the conversation away from like the blame and towards the intention. For him, he really just say to her, like, I know you mean well, and I appreciate that you care about things and the way that they're done. But when you constantly correct the way that I do things, I stop feeling like a partner and start feeling like an assistant. I want to contribute, but the way I see fit. That's just like the starting off point, I think.
Yeah, like with most relationships, the major point of contention or the main issue is usually revolves around a lack of communication. Sitting down, talking about it. What are your expectations? What are your expectations? What's important? Like when the dishes get done, what does that need to look like at the end? That's what's important. So how we get there doesn't necessarily matter. How the dishwasher is arranged probably doesn't matter. What's important is that when we take take dishes out of the cupboards, that they're clean and they're able to be used and don't endanger us from salmonella poisoning.
Right.
If this is what we both agree on, that the result of this situation, the dishes needs to be, then how we get there, like, let's just allow each other to have our own path to that. So you can still have autonomy, but yet both reach the same agreed upon goal.
Communicating expectations and everything else is the most important thing. And that's the challenge, the wonderful challenge that we have here, because for the most part, we have to use language and not just vibe. We have to communicate our needs and our thoughts. So that's great. So we move on to story number 3. Am I the asshole for excluding my brother from a fun event because his wife talks too much? I, 29 female, am having a game night and would love for my brother, 33 male, to attend, but do not enjoy the company of his wife, not because she's a bad person, but because she has no ability to control herself in a social setting. She not only dominates any conversation and is very loud, she also rarely asks anyone questions about themselves without immediately jumping on what they're saying to make it about her. Unfortunately, due to her behavior, I have to exclude my brother from this event and likely future events because there's no way that he would show up without her, which is fair. My brother has been married for a year. This is not new behavior from her, and I have discussed it with him. He says he knows that it is annoying and disruptive, and that he has talked to her about it, but nothing seems to change. This happens at dinners, family gatherings, etc. I have to specifically seek him out alone if I want to talk to him at all. If they are together, she cannot stop talking for both of them, and he can't get a word in. I understand it's probably an anxiety thing, and she claims to be going to a therapist for the past couple of years, but I just don't know if there's anything more I can do without being rude. So here's where I may be the asshole. I'm inviting some cousins and some of my close friends to a game night, but I'm concerned about my brother and his wife finding out and being hurt. Last time she was at the game, she delayed people's turns because she wouldn't stop talking and was practically yelling over people trying to participate in the game about unrelated things. Am I the asshole for excluding them because of her behavior?
If you communicate what your boundaries are and somebody can't maintain those boundaries, or somebody isn't able or willing to respect those boundaries for whatever reason, it is 100% within your responsibility to yourself to maintain your boundaries and to do what you have to do to maintain your own sanity and to live your life the way that you want to live it. Beyond that, it's not your responsibility to change your life or to sacrifice your own experience for somebody else to be able to do their thing. That is a seed that if planted is going to lead to resentment and a lot of unintended side effects down the road. And I think communicating all that ahead of time and setting boundaries, like I don't enjoy being in her presence in a social situation, and I can't enjoy myself, and I don't want to build resentment towards either her or you. Therefore, I'm going to like put up a boundary here. Like, we're not going to be together in social situations in order to maintain our relationship. There are certain ways that you can explain yourself that are going to lead to a better outcome and help the person understand why you're choosing to make the boundaries that you're making.
Yeah, I mean, the more that someone accommodates someone else, the more that they're putting everyone else in the group and themselves in an awkward and uncomfortable situation. And yeah, I mean, the best way to do it, so don't gossip, don't publicly shame her, just quietly do what you need to do. I've been in that situation in the past, years ago, where something similar, and you're just like, let's just get together without this person. But, and I did do that. This is so long ago, but when they found out, man, you just feel horrible because you know that is the right thing to do, but then why not have the guts to just say it up front and say, look, we're going to do this thing. I know you like this, but like we've asked you so many times to please just like let the game flow. Let's just stay on track. And I didn't do that because I was much younger and we all just kind of did that whole thing. Like, we're like, all right, whatever, let's just get together. This is not invited. And of course, when they find out, it's like,
Well, and I've been in that situation at points in my life, and I've come to realize that there's tension in the situation, and there is going to be an uncomfortable conversation that is had. I can have it now and enjoy my, game night with my friends and my cousins, or we can have it after the game night, and we have then also sacrificed the enjoyment for everybody's enjoyment during the game night. Either way,
Yes.
there is going to have to be an uncomfortable conversation, and the more I delay that, the more it snowballs into more discomfort. So like the sooner you can take care of those things, like you're not going to be able to avoid the discomfort. It is coming. Such is life.
Yeah.
Therefore, the sooner you can do it, like you are taking ownership of that and you are taking responsibility for that, and it just relieves a lot of mental anxiety. You don't have to worry about it. Like, it's coming one way or another. So just better to just do it.
yeah, really, I think a lot of the challenges of being in a human body on this planet is we try so much to avoid that uncomfortable situations when really that's the whole point of it sometimes, is that, hey, there's this obstacle. How are you going to deal with it? What is the best way, the conscious way to deal with it? And it really always comes back to bite you in the end if you just try and go around somebody or try and, throw up a smoke screen. My wife, Irish, she's very much a believer in direct communication. And I'm like sometimes trying to be like, let's, dull the knife a little bit here. Let's like not go right down, cut right through. But at the end of the day, like that's a lot of how she appreciates being spoken to and dealt with. Like, you know why? Because a lot of people want to handle somebody, and I think we can feel when we're being handled. And that's almost even worse if there's too many like prefaces. It's like sometimes just come in and go, look, this is the situation. I'm sorry, we've kind of given you a lot of chances. Well, let's do one more chance, but we do not want to put everybody else through this situation where we can't even focus on the game. I think she, even though she might be going to therapy, there's just some block where she just doesn't quite have an awareness of what it does to everybody else. And that maybe this is the only way for her to realize it, is for them to really go, we're doing this without you.
And I think there is also an aspect of it. If you delay that conversation, you're making an assumption about how the other person is going to receive your message. The person who's writing the OP is assuming the brother is going to react in a certain way. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. Again, treating other people the way that you'd want to be treated. I don't like it when people assume how I'm going to react, even if they know me well, and they may be right or they may be not. But I would rather just have it out and not have that assumption out there.
My roommate is a light sleeper, and after multiple complaints from her, I advised her to see a doctor. Am I the asshole? In our house, there's 5 people and 4 cats. Everyone there is full of love, but sometimes I think there's a lack of consideration and it probably comes from all of us. Recently, it's been an issue where my roommate who is in school gets woken up by us closing doors or closing the toilet lid or really anything. She tried to resolve the problem by turning on a fan in her room to help with the sound, and I tried to help by putting hush bumps on everyone's doors. But sometimes they don't work perfectly because it doesn't stop the click from the actual doorknob. After months, she's still complaining that the noise wakes her up, and then she can't go back to sleep, and then loses 4 to 5 hours per night. While I do understand the situation, at this point, I feel like she needs a medical solution. I know we're all different people, but the other roommates in the house hear a noise and go right back to sleep or don't wake up at all. I don't want to be disrespectful, but that is my last suggestion to her because I'm not sure how else we can try to be quieter. One other thing. She said that it's not necessarily the sound, but the vibration that wakes her up. But none of us have felt that. Maybe we're just oblivious to it.
Ask her, like, what could we reasonably do that would satisfy your need in this situation? What are the actions that the roommates are able or willing to take? And if they satisfy each other, then perfect. If she has asks that the roommates can't satisfy, like not getting up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or maybe some of the roommates just don't care that much, that's an option too. You know, maybe they're just like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't really care if I'm a little bit loud. Some people are, some people are like that. Then if there's not an agreement there, then the person either has to leave or accept the situation.
Yeah, I had a friend who became a roommate of mine for about a year and a half. And he used to have a roommate who, for whatever reason, this was when he was back in college, they shared a very large room. And so he was on one end and his roommate was on the other. He had to get up early for class, and the roommate was up until like 3 a.m, just like on his computer, tap, 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 doing all kinds of things on his computer. And he eventually got used to the noise, but it was just the glare of the screen that just, he would look over and boom, blind him. I'm light sensitive still when it comes to that kind of thing. Like I sometimes will have to put something over my eyes, just like a folded up shirt, just to make sure it's extra dark. Someone here wrote in the comments, NTA, which means not the asshole. I'm a light sleeper and I don't make it anyone else's problem. I sleep with earplugs and a noise machine. And another commenter said, first night with earplugs might be uncomfortable, but you get used to them real fast and there's a lot of varieties. They're actually amazing and absolutely game changers. Obviously, some people just believe it's just about noise, but as she said, it's sometimes a vibration, which is a different thing. It's tricky. I mean, like when it comes to roommates, unfortunately, before you actually move in, you really don't know how they live. A good friend of mine, he had a roommate who basically told him, I'm never home. I work all the time. I have friends. I just come here to sleep. And that was true for about a month. And then he got laid off and he never left the apartment. He was there all the time, just hanging out. And my friend was like, the whole thing is the premise was I felt like I'd still have my space during the day because he works from home. And now he's dealing with this guy who's there all the time, coming in and out, walking into the kitchen, engaging him, which again, I'm sure that's fine in small doses, but the premise was he's not going to be here all the time. I don't have to worry about it, It's just too bad people can't take a trial run.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum. My partner says my superpower is my ability to fall asleep. I lay my head on the pillow, light, dark, sound, no sound, and I'm asleep in 30 seconds. Airplanes, buses, and I don't know that I'm a super deep sleeper, but because I can get woken up pretty easily, and when I wake up, I'm able to just kind of go. I'm not super groggy, but so I can't really relate to the person who's the super light sleeper. But I think it's setting expectations and coming to an agreement, like setting some boundaries, like what we're willing to do, what we're not willing to do. Can we come to an agreement on this that everybody's happy with? And if we all do the things that we say we're going to do, then the complaints have to stop.
This brings up an interesting point. I was thinking about this. It's amazing how many noises that we get used to. I guess where you are out in the country, probably you don't have the same thing, but when you're in a city, you just hear hums, you hear whether it's mechanical hums or planes and cars, and not to mention all the electromagnetic energy that flies through the air on a daily basis. So it's amazing what you get used to. But a good example is Irish used to work in an office, and She said the first week she would just hear this constant hum. And she's like, oh my God, does that ever stop? And everyone's like, no, that's just kind of there. You get used to it. And at first she couldn't imagine getting used to it. And then one day she's like, I don't even notice it anymore. That can't be good, right?
At one point in time in my life, I lived near a train track, and this was a busy train track. There were 60 to 80 trains that went by per day. So,
Wow.
yeah, and some of this was in Colorado. This is on the eastern slope, south of Denver. There's a big rail line that goes through there that transports coal. So some of these trains were really long, and and they were constant all day and all through the night, and just got used to it. The first couple of weeks were rough because that is a vibration too. Like you could, like everything in the house shakes. So we're that close to the track, but yeah, you can get used to it. People are amazingly adaptable and can get used to just about anything.
I hear that about prisoners, that people like, they have these big lives, and when they get put into jail, they say everything has to shrink down to the size of a cell, and they do get used to it. I'm sure they don't like it, but they some of them get through it somehow. But you mentioned how loud trains can be and how long. Irish and I were in Oregon, and right along the Columbia River, there's this train that just comes by, and we're walking along it between two waterfalls, and you get pretty close to it. Those things, I can't even count how many cars they have. It's all like Amazon, but it's like maybe 100+ cars. They just keep going and going, and yeah, you feel it, you hear it. So I have to give a lot of props to you, because I can't imagine that I could live that close to a train and ever block it out. Irish and I once stayed at a hotel that was very close to an airport, and they told us planes will come over, but it's not too bad. But it was bad for both of us. You would hear it, you would feel it, the whole place would shake. We're like, are we literally right in the trajectory of right when they take off? And yes, and I will tell you that we did not even stay the night. We decided, like, let's just pack up and go and just drive back to LA, because it wasn't that far. It was that bad.
And for them, they weren't even lying, because for them, it's really not that bad. They're just used to it.
Right. For them, you're right. So now let's cross the threshold into the somewhat bizarre. This story is from Glitch in the Matrix. Did we die? So this happened about a year ago, and I still think about it all the time. I don't really know how to explain it without sounding crazy, but it's the experience that sent me down the whole quantum immortality rabbit hole. About a week before the main event, my friend Morgan and I were driving, and a car cut us off and kicked up a rock. It hit my windshield literally right in front of my face. For a split second, it felt like the rock almost went through the glass, even though it didn't. I turned on the windshield wipers thinking maybe it was dust, but there was a chip with a tiny crack coming off of it. We both saw it and talked about how annoying it was. Fast forward a week, I was supposed to meet Morgan for a night out, but I got out of work late, and by the time I got there, she was already a little drunk. I decided it was better to just drive her home first so I could relax and enjoy the rest of my night without worrying about her. It was raining pretty hard, and I was on the highway doing the speed limit. There are about 5 lanes, and I was in the middle lane with a bunch of cars behind me. That's when I hydroplaned. I drive a sports car and have experience controlling it. I drift corners sometimes, so I know how it responds, but this was different. I started fishtailing across the highway, within inches of the median multiple times, little back and forth across all of the lanes. We ended up doing a full 180 and were facing the wrong direction in traffic, headlights coming straight towards us. As soon as the car stopped spinning, I booked a U-turn and floored it so we wouldn't get hit. Now this is the part that really messes with me. Morgan is someone who knocks out instantly, like you. When she sleeps, she's incredibly hard to wake up. Like you could be mid-conversation and she's gone. She wakes up in that moment with a gasp and says, "We got into a 9-car pileup." I just stared at her because that absolutely would have happened if we'd hit the highway maybe 10 seconds later. After that, everything felt off. While I'm driving, I realize the chip in my windshield is gone. Completely gone. No crack, nothing. I have a dash cam, so I pulled over and checked the footage. My dash cam records in 2 to 3 minute loops. The entire loop with the hydroplaning, the spinning, her waking up and saying that we were in a pileup is missing. Not corrupted, not half there, just gone, like it never happened.
What was the question? What was the premise of it? Did we die?
Yes, did we die? And by the way, this is the whole concept of the quantum shifting. I have some thoughts on that, but
Yeah.
it's like what did they call it there? Quantum.
Like jumping timelines or something? Quantum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll read you something I came across after this happened, because I was like, I wonder what exactly they're talking about. Basically, it says quantum jumping doesn't mean physically teleporting to another universe where a different event already happened. It means shifting the version of reality you continue to experience by shifting your internal state. Reality is made of many potential outcomes, and consciousness locks onto the one that matches its most dominant frequency. This happens because of your thoughts, emotions, and expectations. So in a scenario where one outcome is injury and another one is safety, a quantum jump happens when someone refuses to mentally, emotionally, and energetically collapse into the negative outcome, and instead aligns with the version of themselves that's in the eye of the storm. In other words, you don't jump away from what happened, you jump toward the timeline where the event doesn't define you.
I believe that 100%. And I think we're all experiencing that all the time. The catch with this particular story is that he was conscious of it. Most people are doing that all the time, in my belief. Exactly how it was explained there, but we're just not conscious of it. We're not aware of, there's two forks in the road. All we know is what happened on the fork that we take. We're not aware. Often we're not even aware that there was another fork to be taken, because just life presents us with so many different opportunities and so many choices. But something happened with his consciousness, and consciousness is malleable. Like it can shift and change in a lot of ways. It can be very narrow, be very focused. It can be very obtuse and spread out. For me, it's not at all out of the realm of possibility that he experienced, the two people in that car. He had the experience of getting away, doing what he did as he explained it, and she had a different experience, and she was asleep when all this happened.
Yeah, she had passed out, and she woke up just like right after, as if she's echoing something that happened in the original reality. It's like, oh my God, we got into a 9-car pileup.
On some level, it did happen. In some version of the multiverse, that did happen. So that they can both be right. He wasn't aware of it, but she was aware of the other fork in the road. And the only reason he became aware of it was because she was in a different state of consciousness and was able to have that other experience. I did a very large dose of mushrooms all by myself. I got to the point where I was having multiple experiences at the same time. I cannot put it into words. It's just impossible to articulate what it was like. But what you said about collapsing reality based on the state of your consciousness and your vibration, while I was under the influence, I saw like all the different paths I could take, because it was such an intense and mentally jarring experience. I wasn't able to really focus on any one path. I was just felt like I was trying to survive, because I thought I was dead. But I also saw a version of myself that was in Malibu, sitting by a pool, drinking a pineapple smoothie in a mansion. I am having that experience. Like, I could taste the pineapple. I could see the palm trees around the pool. And it was kind of almost from the observer position, but I felt like I could, if I focused on it, I could go into that and be more at one with that experience. And I also had an experience almost simultaneously where I got in my car and tried to drive away, and I drove off of a cliff, and my car was stuck, and it was like a precarious situation. I was like, oh, I could focus on that too, but I had both of those experiences. In this reality, I didn't have either of those experiences. It's so hard to explain, and it happened basically simultaneously. It was as fast as shifting a thought, like as quickly as a thought can come into your mind. It was as quickly as I went from being in Malibu to going off the edge of this road and getting stuck in this ditch, like that fast.
That's totally fascinating. I've had experiences sort of similar, not under the influence of anything. Just there's a lot of times I have, I guess, maybe like a lucid dream moment where it's usually in meditation, but it could be anywhere. Like we mentioned earlier, like if I'm doing some activity, like when I'm doing a lot of driving, there are times when I'm like, okay, I need to get from here to here. Let me try and get into a flow state so that I don't feel like, as I'm driving up the 5, for example, it's not the most interesting scenery. So I kind of would like to get into this other place where I don't have to just look at that for all that time. And yeah, sometimes I just have that moment where I shared with friends that I have a few different realities that I'm like, what is that? Is that an alternate version of me that I see doing these other things? Consciousness is just, fascinating because it's connected, I believe, to so much more than we have access to here on the third dimensional plane. So yeah, I wanted to read you something real quick. Someone said, anyone heard of the deja vu theory? The theory is that deja vu is you remembering alternate timelines. When we die, we are reset to our own life and start to live our lives all over again, just in different timelines or an alternate reality. It's almost like a choose your own adventure. Like you actually have to follow every possible thing. I don't know about that. Every time you're at a crossroads like that would imply that every possible reality at some point or another, you go down that path and experience it.
My belief is that there is only one consciousness. There's just one thing, and we are all part of it. The aspect of consciousness that is expressing as myself, Ian, right now, is fundamentally not different than Trill. Like, we all originate from the same place, and if you zoom out enough, it's just one consciousness. And I think our ability to tap into these different streams of consciousness, different versions of ourselves, even different people's experiences, that all depends on our ability to navigate it and our belief that we can navigate consciousness and we can do these things. I think that plays a big role in it too.
Where they say you can't know someone until you walk a mile in their shoes. If we could project our consciousness, our hearts into someone else's situation, we'd have so much more empathy for each other because we'd understand this person is struggling. They're pushing so hard just to get maybe so little, which
This
is kind of
person is so much like me. We are 99.9% the same.
Yeah, exactly. We are so much more alike than we are different. That's for sure. It's in fact, I think that the whole experience of being here on this planet as a spiritual energy inside a body is to sort of understand that we are all the same. I agree with you about one collective consciousness. There's certain ways people are raised, but at the end of the day, they're just a soul. And that's what I think is the interesting challenge. It's again, the more people get into the us versus them is really a path towards unhappiness. Treat others the way you want to be treated, the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself. And in a big city like Los Angeles, it can be so easy to see other people as totally different. What I think is pretty amazing about bigger cities is that there is definitely an appreciation of diversity on many levels. And even if you just start with food, I just always think, would anyone really want to get rid of all of these other, cultural influences on food? Like the spices of India, the way that Japanese prepare food. That's the beauty of it, is to try something different, to experience something different.
Yeah, very much so. We're all brothers and sisters, quite literally. And when you leave your body, you have that realization that, that's not that person laying on the bed there. That's not really me. I'm really so much more like everybody else. And even the idea of everybody else seems weird because there is no everybody else. It's we're all the same.
I don't know if I shared this with you before or not, but I heard this story about this guy who was, I guess he worked I'm not sure if he was like an EMT or something, but maybe he was a firefighter. And he had this near-death experience where he was going in to save somebody and they had been breathing in these toxic chemicals. And right as he went there to help her, she exhaled these chemicals that she's been breathing, and he inhaled deeply and he immediately felt weird, but it didn't happen for another day later. He just was having trouble breathing. And I guess he passed out, was rushed to the hospital, and he died. And so he was dead for, I'm not sure how long, but at least a few minutes. And he said that he vividly remembers his spirit sort of immediately leaving this body and going like all the way through across the cosmos. There's more to the story, but the short of it is that once he was there, as soon as he left his body, he was like instantly realized how much bigger he is as a spirit and how his earth life was only like, 1-2% of who he really is. And he was immediately like, wow, I cannot believe I have all this other knowledge and all this other, connectivity. I was so small back then. And he kind of resented his life. He's like, oh, I don't want to go back to that. That's just like, that guy didn't really know anything. But then he ended up coming back, remembering this experience. So it really helped him because now moving forward, he knows for a fact that he's more. What an experience to actually 100% know and come back and realize that this is just one life, one experience, and that you're not just 3D.
Yeah.
So one last thing before I move on to the last story. I just saw this. Someone mentioned quantum immortality. They say it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. I've never heard of that phrase, but it's kind of an interesting concept where it's saying there's a branch where the pile up happened and you didn't continue, but your consciousness carried into the nearest surviving timeline. That would explain the missing artifact of the windshield chip and the missing recording of the dash cam camera. Like in this version, none of that ever happened. I've never heard of quantum immortality, but that is kind of cool. If you have something that you're meant to experience, you can consciously shift.
It sounds like he unconsciously shifted because it just happened spontaneously. Well, some part of his consciousness directed that action, but yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was going to say exactly that. Yes, it is unconscious, but maybe there's a deeper awareness that he's not conscious of, but some part of him knows we got to do this. Those stories always fascinate me. My second ayahuasca ceremony was both the best and worst experience ever. So my first ayahuasca ceremony was the most profound in terms of insight. The second one was the longest, most painful, and perhaps taught me the most about myself. I took an incredibly high dose, mostly because I felt no effects for the first several hours, and I kept asking for more, but also because that's who I am as a person, eager, intense, and willing to push myself beyond any limits when working towards a goal. When ayahuasca finally kicked in, some 3.5 hours after the first dose, I found myself in hell. What followed were perhaps the worst 16 hours of my life ever. It was pure agony, pure intensity. It felt like an anaconda invaded my body and was trying to wriggle out of my skin. My brain was melting. I thought I was dying, and I believed it. Time didn't exist. What felt like hours turned out to be minutes, and the trip seemed like a pure, endless inferno. What is incredible about this experience, though, is that I felt safe throughout it. Not safe in the sense that nothing bad was going to happen to me, quite the opposite. I thought I was actively dying. But I felt that the tribe was watching over me, that I am not alone, that I am in some peculiar way held by some higher power and therefore safe, that whatever is happening to me was meant to happen, that I am being taught a lesson, that there is a presence over me looking after me, even when I was convinced I was dying, that these were my last minutes on earth. I was calm and accepting. In that moment, I fully accepted myself, my life, and my struggles. I felt grateful and had no regrets. This, I imagine, is how someone going through a rite of passage might feel. That state of mind is important because a lot of trauma is about being disconnected from the processes, about trying to resist, but having no real means for that. It's about helplessness, about being lonely. For me, this grand gesture of traveling half the world and subjecting myself to an arduous and risky process was part of the healing journey. It wasn't just about ayahuasca, but rather about putting myself first, showing myself that I deserve to be helped and healed, and that I can go to enormous lengths to give myself whatever it is I need. As a consequence, I've woken up a sense of courage and agency in myself that I didn't know existed. I've also become incredibly open to other people. So you, more than anyone I know, has the most experience with ayahuasca. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, that's really beautiful. And ayahuasca, having worked with it a lot personally and facilitated a couple hundred ceremonies. I've been to Peru and Colombia. I've worked with indigenous tribes. I've worked with it all over the United States. And what he explained, it sounded like he went to South America. You're much more likely to get that sort of experience in a place like South America, but anybody can have it at any time. One night I'll have one drink and have a pretty intense experience. The next night I would have 3, 4, 5, just a lot more, and nothing happen until I have a mental shift. And that happens with people too. They drink and nothing happens until they have some sort of internal shift, and then it kicks in. So that's not unusual. Like most things, like for me personally, I always call them the best worst experiences of my life, because they're the hardest things and the most uncomfortable experiences that I've ever had are simultaneously the ones that I've learned the most from and have helped me to grow the most and have contributed to where I am in life and my ability to enjoy life and my perspective. There's a saying in ayahuasca and working with psychedelics is that they don't give you what you want, they give you what you need. I just trust that he got what he needed in that experience, and to have those deep realizations about himself was to go through a death experience, which sounds like exactly what he had. It was like a profound ego death experience.
I have a question about that. As a facilitator, what are some things you would do if someone was having sort of a bad experience with ayahuasca?
It really depends on the individual, and I never framed one of those experiences as bad. Like, just kind of how I explained that, I always framed it as like, okay, well, this is what this person needs. As excruciating as it may be for them in this moment, like, I trust that this is what this person needs. If they ask for help, or if there's an appropriate thing to do at that time, because when you're in an ayahuasca ceremony like that, I always thought of myself as like a puppet on marionette strings. Like my intention going into facilitating ayahuasca ceremonies was to be an instrument for the ayahuasca to do whatever needed to be done within the ceremony. So I kind of handed the reins over and said, going into ayahuasca, if whatever you need me for that is best for the well-being of this group, like I submit to that. Sometimes it was blowing tobacco smoke on people, so I would often get like intuitive hits, or I would know, like there might be 30 people in a room and it's completely dark, but I just get the intuition I need to stand up and walk over to one corner of the darkness. And every single time that somebody would be there, it'd be like, can I have a drink of water? Or I don't feel good, or can you help me to the bathroom? Or, whatever it may be. I very much took myself out of it. It wasn't about me at all. It was about being a vessel and a channel for like whatever needed to happen. I was like, again, like a marionette on a string. Things were happening, but I wasn't necessarily doing them, and I did have control and agency over myself. There was a certain extent where I allowed myself to be used as a tool, provide the experiences for the people in the ceremony that needed them. Sometimes people would ask for something, but like, yes, 100%, that's appropriate to help you. Sometimes people would ask for things and it's like, no, actually, I'll stand here. If you need to get up and go to the bathroom, I'll stand here and I'll kind of walk next to you, but you don't need me to carry you like a baby to the bathroom. So it really depended on the individual and the situation.
How many of those would you say you facilitated? Is it countless? You can't even actually put a number to it?
A couple hundred.
Wow. And that was over like a decade, or how many years?
Probably a 4-year period of time.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it certainly looks like a fascinating experience, just going to another country, being immersed by nature.
At one point in Colombia, I had to hike an hour down this river out into the middle of nowhere to do a ceremony, and it was one of the most profound experiences of my life. But it was really hard to get to, and I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that other people do what I did to get there.
Wow, that's cool. That's a great way to just go with the flow and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I mean, I've also drank ayahuasca in downtown LA. I learned a lot from that experience. I won't even call it a ceremony because it really wasn't. The contrast between going out into the middle of the jungle in Colombia and drinking ayahuasca in downtown LA, where you're in a yoga studio right next to the street. I don't believe that I experienced any deep healing from that, but I did learn a lot, and having that contrast allowed me to really appreciate some of the very special places that I was in, and helped me to advise people on what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, like how to distinguish when and where they should work with ayahuasca.
Yeah, I mean, I've not done it before, as you know, but if and when I do it, it would preferably be in a jungle-like setting, immersed by nature, since I'm such a big fan of nature. I can almost guarantee, unless someone spikes a drink of mine, I will not be doing it in a city environment, especially if, like what you said, is right outside, like we mentioned earlier, all the noises you hear that you don't normally pay attention to. But suddenly I can only imagine how hyper aware you become of every single thing. And a city is probably not the best place to be in that state.
Thinking about the story, that gentleman drinking the ayahuasca and having that experience is only 10, maybe 15% of the experience. The majority of it happens in your preparation beforehand and the integration afterwards. I can't stress enough how important it is, how much the preparation affects the experience itself, and how much the integration period afterwards and how intentional you are then helps you to take the things that you've learned and turn the experience into something actionable in your life that actually makes a difference.
How long on average would you say it takes for someone to fully integrate the experience?
It depends on the individual, depends on the thing that they're trying to integrate. I told you about that mushroom trip where I was experiencing multiple realities at once. I feel like I'm still integrating that experience. So it's been almost 6 years since that experience.
I think that's kind of a big takeaway from all this, is that life is a long process, and it takes us time and we should give ourselves the time and the grace to integrate all kinds of experiences we have. Every time we do so, we kind of reach another level of awareness and connection. People, I guess, have experiences, whether it be near-death experiences or ayahuasca, and they walk away sort of with a euphoric high or sort of an awareness that they've achieved. But that sometimes could just be the contact high, and then have to sort of sit with it, integrate it, align it, figure out what the greater truth is, and then you can move forward with that knowledge as opposed to just the quick high. And which is why we once talked about how people who keep doing it over and over again, like let's say a few times a month or many times a year, you're kind of hitting the reset button again without the integration.
Yeah, that contact high, as you put it, there's something very profound about that. Physiologically, it releases endorphins, and it's a peak experience. But just because you had that peak experience does not mean that your life is going to change outside of that peak experience. Your life changing requires you to take whatever you learned from that, whatever insights you've been given, and implement them and take action upon them in your life.
Absolutely. Well, this has been exhilarating for me. So thank you so much for joining me today, Ian. I greatly appreciate it.
Happy to. I'm really thrilled that you're doing this podcast, and I'm so grateful to be the first guest, and always happy to talk to you.
If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on today's stories. Until next time, namaste. What do you want me to do? You want me to get some photos or reaction stuff? Like, like, give a little bit of yeah, let's try that.